What was your, what the, how do people not know this moment? You need to clean out the lint trap in a dryer. I frequently come across people in their 30s that can't figure out why their clothes take so long to dry. You know, maybe people are just so used to seeing error messages anytime something's going the way it shouldn't, and so when they don't see an error message on the dryer, they just assume everything is fine. That women can't hold their period blood. I've seen so many people who were surprised when they learned that you can't hold the blood that comes out of you like pee. Yeah, well, I guess I do feel kind of bad for your underwear then. I was watching a sunset at the beach with a friend when she asked me why the ocean doesn't extinguish the sun when the sun goes under the water. She was young, but an adult. Had a short conversation about the sun, the earth, and the rotation of the earth. I bet that person wasn't expecting much when they asked the question, but it turned into, let me explain the entire universe to you. My aunt once argued with me that H2O was not 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, but a word on its own, maybe spelled H2O. I was never clear on that. It's just another word for water. It doesn't stand for anything. I was 13. I still get mad remembering it. Like, it's kind of understandable if someone's like, oh, I didn't realize that H2O stood for hydrogen and oxygen. But if you are, like, actively telling someone, it's like, no, it does not mean that. That's all a lie. Like, I don't know where you get that from. Some third graders I knew thought you could become president by killing the former one. They thought John Wilkes Booth became president by shooting Lincoln. Well, to be honest, if that were true, the turnover rate in the presidency would be extremely high. We'd have a new president every other day. I was in a small town convenience store. The candy bars were marked 3 for $1. I picked up 2 and handed toward the checkout. The store did not have an automatic cash register, just a drawer. At the cash register, the cashier said, "Those are 3 for $1. I said, "That's okay, I only want 2. Cue disturbed look on his face. I'm gonna have to charge you extra. Okay, I replied. He thought for a moment, then with a look of pride he said, 50 cents. Oh, okay, I replied, before racing out of town with my 16.6666 cents of ill-gotten gain. Come on, man, I know you work in a small town convenience store, but are fractions that difficult? I once made out with a girl, nothing else. The next day she called me, crying, asking if she could be pregnant. We were both 22. You know, with how much sex is promoted just in regular media, I'm amazed if somebody can even make it to the age of like 14 without knowing the birds and the bees. I had to explain to a 21-year-old that a hysterectomy was not reversible. This was after he told me that his fiancée would just get a hysterectomy and then have it reversed when they want to have children. They both attended private religious schools their entire education. Yeah, there's a handful of different ways to provide birth control, and you probably want to figure out the correct one and not make a big mistake. On 9/11, when I arrived at my office, coworkers were discussing what happened. Someone mentioned attacks on both coasts. I was surprised to hear that, as I hadn't heard anything about the West Coast being attacked. Turns out they thought D.C. was in Washington State. You know, it's kind of weird that the westmost state in the country is Washington. It's like they developed all of these states all the way to the other end, and then once they got to the end, they're like, we can't think of a name, let's just reuse Washington again. But then you also have to consider, like, what if our nation's capital really was on the opposite end of where the country started? It's like, how would that happen? Mid-20-year-old friend didn't know you have to change the bag in a vacuum every once in a while. Yeah, it turns out vacuums don't just teleport everything it sucks up into some distant void. I found that out the hard way. I just had to replace my vacuum because the last one got murdered by cat hair. Working for a finance company, and a customer asked me, why am I being charged interest on my loan? I remember 90% of our lunchtime chatter was how much people need to learn financial literacy in school. You know, it kind of makes you think that maybe the people that are in charge of public education are the people who also just don't want most people to succeed in life. I heard a guy once complain that the suppositories he was given were so big he had to cut them in half to take them. I can't imagine they tasted very good. I grew up in Alaska, but I went to 5th grade in Las Vegas. My first day, they had me introduce myself to the class and to tell them some interesting things about Alaska. I mentioned it was the largest state, and everyone started arguing with me. I looked at the map of the US on the wall and instantly understood why they were confused. Alaska was shrunk down in a little box in the corner. I laughed and said, "Do you think it's an island too?" Crickets. Pretty sure they thought it was an island. I showed them there were 5 longitudinal lines across Alaska and only 3 across Texas. Also showed them on the map where it said it was attached to Canada. Our education system sucks. Man, Alaska is just unreasonably big. Like, who even knows what could be hidden in those 500,000 square miles in Alaskan wilderness? When I lived with my old roommates, I was choking on some food, and immediately I started trying to cough and put my hands on my neck, which is a universal choking sign. They looked at me and stared blankly, asking, "What is it? Are you hot?" They're in their 20s. Well, I would recommend finding some new roommates before you start choking again. Though I'm not sure how much my cat is gonna help when I start choking. Some people don't know that they can actually manage their own retirement fund. They often see it as a bonus they get once they retire, rather than a huge life-changing investment. It's like a lot of people seem to think that if it weren't for Ponzi schemes like Social Security, that it's just impossible to retire. It's like, no, you don't have to force yourself to pay into it. It is possible to just set some money aside. You don't have to spend it as soon as you get it. My mother was in her 40s when she learned that the Civil War was not between North America and South America. She looked at me and said, "You mean we fought ourselves?" Yeah, funny how civil wars are kinda like that. I used to work at a print shop that had public computers where you could log in and print things you needed. A college-aged girl came up to me and asked if we could print something off her flash drive. I told her yes, and to just go to a computer and open her document and select which folder she wanted, and that was it. So she goes and sits at a computer and just stares at it. I go over to her and ask if something was wrong, and she said, "I don't know how to use this." I said, "You don't know how to use a computer?" She said she had no idea how to plug in her flash drive to the computer and open her document. Her reasoning was because she had a Mac, and the computers were PC, and she didn't know that they functioned the same. For a college student, I couldn't believe she didn't know how to do it. See, I will never understand the appeal of Apple products compared to just like Windows computers, but I guess people just like to follow the trend. In 12th grade, a classmate asked what a verb is, and after we explained it to him, he asked how he is supposed to identify them in the text. You know, speaking of grammatical terms, remember in school when they teach you about, nouns and verbs and adverbs and pronouns? You know, when we first learned about pronouns, I didn't really think much of it. And now it seems like people are completely obsessed and never shut up about it. When I watch the actual criminal investigation shows on the CI channel, the suspects who betray themselves in the interrogation room when they think they are alone and there is no camera and microphone. I mean, it kind of makes you wonder how much, actual criminals like to follow true crime documentaries. So it's like, do they follow true crime to learn what not to do? Probably not if they're the ones getting caught. Unfortunately, I was the dumb one here. From the US, visiting a friend in France, she told me that the stores close on Sunday. I thought I understood. Yeah, so the department stores and stuff are closed. But of course, necessities like groceries and pharmacies are open. I needed to get something at the pharmacy and asked if we could stop by one. She reminded me it was Sunday and the pharmacy was closed. Cue blue screen in my brain. But they're pharmacies. Surely not everything is closed. No, hun, she says, it's Sunday. Stores are closed on Sunday. You could practically hear my brain doing a dial tone as I tried to process this very simple idea. Yeah, Europeans do like to brag that oh, we don't have to work as many hours as Americans. But it's like, yeah, there's actual costs to that though. Your vehicle needs an oil change more than every few years. Also, don't go to Walmart for your oil change. Go to a reputable place, please. Man, there we go with the oil changes again. I feel like that's some knowledge that really needs to spread around a little bit more. I explained to my friend in grade 12 that both hands are actually doing something when you play guitar. He thought one hand just held the guitar up while the strumming did the rest. Actually, when I was a kid, I didn't understand how guitars worked either. I knew you used both hands, but I didn't know that moving your fingers up the frets actually changed the notes. I thought you would strum, and you would actually change the tuning pegs to change what note you're playing. So the whole time you're playing a song, you just have to keep retuning it. Now that I'm a pretty experienced guitar player, I'm pretty glad that's not the case. But it looks like that's all the stories for today. I guess that's part 6 or 7 for stupid things people have said. So I'll see you next time.